So should we start? We would resolve as okay. Can't hear or see. Right. The same problem is happening with me. Rivu, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
But I can't hear you then. I don't know. Rivu, say something?
Hello.
Yeah. Now I'm able to hear you. Great. So who are here else? Anubhav, what problem? Is it sick? Should we start?
Yes, we can, I guess.
But I think at the first place, both of our screens shouldn't be here. Okay. I think everyone is able to see me. Uh, Good evening, guys. Myself, Indranil, welcoming you from GDG Kolkata on behalf of my team. I hope you are all well. So, the first thing is, I would like to tell you that this is the tough time, but we are continuously trying our best to motivate yourself and to bring you some great content from our great speakers. And since today's topic is very interesting and it is going to be very fruitful, I guess, because at least for it is fruitful for me, a person who is not in touch with his uh, career kickstarting thing, that is the Android. But I am not right now very much in touch, and I am not very much able to check what is the latest things available in the Android architecture, which is very necessary for a professional programming uh, to develop any enterprise app or say any product, and a basic architecture or say a very advanced architecture, whatever you need is very required. So I guess today's talk, will be very helpful for you people. And who is going to take this? It's the person who needs no introduction. He is my friend for many years, and I am very glad to see him on the screen after so many days. I can't express my joy. I may be stumbling just because of I can see my excitement. I can't hold on to it. Uh, so he's. I hope you know, but still, I would like to give a quick 1 minute intro of him. That he is currently working in Byju's as a senior software engineer, and what if you don't know Byju's? I'm sorry, and I'm sorry that you don't know Byju's. Uh, uh, but that's your problem because Byju's is the current India's justice sponsor and the leading market leaders in the education sector. And Rivu is one of their greatest team member. So yeah, we can now welcome him. Rivu, here you go on
Hi,
and
everyone.
take it to Excel.
Yeah, thanks, Indranil, for the great intro. Is there anyone new in the group? Then we can talk after this session in any social media. So I used to be here in Kolkata few like a couple of years back. I used to be part of GDG Kolkata. Right now, I uh, I am still part of GDG Kolkata, but not as much actively as I was before. Uh, and right now, I'm in Bangalore. And yeah, let's start on the session. So today, I'm not going to talk about anything totally new. Thou will be using few new things here in the demo that I will explain a bit. But what we are going to talk about is pretty much base of any platform or any project, you can say. So we'll talk about the architectures or architecture patterns. Already gave my intro, but still, if you want to hear it again. So my name is Ribu Chakraborty. I am a senior software engineer at Android at Byju's, the learning app. Uh, yeah, Byju's is sponsor of current Indian cricket team, and as well as you have seen a lot of ads of Byju's if you watch TV. Yeah, not as much as Ryan Martin if you watch current news channels in Bengali, especially. But yeah, apart from my day-to-day job, I also write books, create videos at Caster.io, and I was one of the first to start Kotlin in India. So yeah, I am a Kotlin advocate. Here's my website, review.dev. You can check it out anytime. So yeah, we'll be discussing about architecture patterns in Android. So what is an architecture? An architecture is basically a code structure or collection of principles or patterns, right? It helps us to organize our code in a project in a better way so that it's easier to maintain in future, and we can write efficient test cases. Test cases again guards us in future changes, so that anything doesn't break in future if we change something. So yeah, architecture helps us achieve all these. But again, it's a collection of principles. Now, what principles? Where does it come from? So if you go to base of any architecture, any popular architecture pattern, or from any platform, not only in Android, then you will see at the base there is always this thing: solid principles. So let's talk about any architecture you want. You will find solid principles at the base of it. So I know a lot of us forgot the solid principles because we studied it at the colleges, and then when I am at the job, no one studies it that much unless they are preparing for interviews. And we think that these principles are not that much used in our day-to-day life. But what we don't notice is that how much we use these principles without noticing. So I will give a short brush up of solid principle here. So the S of solid stands for single responsibility. It says every class should have a single responsibility. For example, when I started Android, let's be very frank. When I started Android, I used to write all the code in the activity, or which is famous as a single or activity only architecture. Uh, it is not actually a architecture; it's a meme kind of. But yeah, when I started around 9 years back, it was the way people used to do in Android. But it was wrong, very wrong. So every class should have a single responsibility. That means, for example, the activity should only be responsible in showing the UI, nothing at all, nothing more than that. The presenter or view model, whatever you use, that should only be responsible in the business logic. It should not know how the data is fetched or anything more than the business logic. So yeah, as I said, we already use solid principles. I already showed the use of single responsibility that we use. Second, O of solid principle says open close. So it says that entities should be open for extension but closed for modification. It actually enables mocking if you like notice it. So it actually says that not only for mocking, it's actually base of how we create different interfaces and implementations. So it actually says that only, that create an interface for what your API is going to provide. So that API should be an interface, and uh, so that who subscribes to that API. For example, if you create an interface of your repository, then your presenter or your view model uses that repository interface, so that it can access all the functionalities of the repository, but it cannot modify the repository code, right? So that's what open close principle says. Now, risk of substitution. So it's an extension of open close principle. It actually enables you to do mocking or faking or any other testing policy that you use. So it says that you can read the definition here. I am not going to repeat it. It basically says that if you have an interface or abstract class, say X, and Y implements X, or Y extends X. So if there's if a class or if a function accepts X, then it should also accept Y. So that's quite obvious, right? And that's why we use interfaces, so that while writing our test cases, we can use Mockito to mock them, or we can fake them. So a lot of people out there doesn't support mocking your interfaces and classes. Rather than they encourage you to write the fake implementations. So that also is dependent on this principle. After that, I of solid stands for interface segregation. So clients should not be forced to depend upon interfaces that they do not use. So what does it mean? For example, you have say a callback, right? You created a custom view, and you created a callback for that. And after that, say you created a click callback. Now after a few days, you needed to create like you needed another functionality, so that for the say touch or drag callback, right? So instead of creating another callback, you added a method in the click callback. Now that is against interface segregation principle. What it says that, for example, the client which uses the set on click listener or set which uses the click callback, it should not be forced to use to extend the function touch or drag, because it doesn't uses them. It only needs the click functionality. Why should it depend on drag or touch, right? So that's the interface segregation principle. Then last of all, D of solid is dependency inversion, or you can also say it's basically the same principle as inversion of control. It's very simple. Your activity uses adapter, for example, or your view model uses or your presenter uses repository, for example. It should not know how to create that dependency, right? So for example, why this principle? So what happens is that you have repository implementation, right? Now you change the, say you need another parameter in your repository constructor, right? So you change the constructor. Now if a presenter creates its own dependency, or view model creates its own dependency on repository, what it has to do is that it has to again you have to change in the view model and presenter as well, right? So if you do it with dependency injection, then unless there's a change needed for presenter view model, or unless there's a drastic change in view model's public behavior, you don't need to change, unless there's a drastic change in repositories public behavior, then you don't need to change in presenter view model. Now, what did I mean by drastic change in public behavior? That means simple, you change the signature of a public method or public function in your repository. So in that case, view model or presenter needs to address that, right? But otherwise, they don't. It also enables less coupling. So yeah, that was the solid principle. Now let us get back to Android. So in an usual Android app, there are a lot of layers, right? If there aren't, then I would say you need to go through the next part of what I say very carefully, because you need to have layers. So layers separate one part of the code from other part of the code. Now, what do I mean by layers? So if you follow clean architecture, then you will have these much layers in your Android project: data layer, domain layer, presentation layer, and UI layer. And also, data layer might have child layers as cache and remote. Now, let us not discuss about clean today. Uh, let us simplify this thing so that we can understand better. So data, presentation, and UI. These are three layers. Now, I am not saying that you should architecture like every feature should be inside these layers, or like you should package by layers. I'm not saying that. You can package by features. Rather, that's what I support. Or I would say package by features is a better choice. Or if you do multi-module, then module by features is a better choice. Now, inside the feature module or inside the feature package, you can still use these layers as a separate package. And that's what I do, if you ask me. So let us see what's inside that data layer. So that's what's supposed to be in data layer. There should be a repository. Also, if you follow clean and if you have a domain layer, then the repository should be in domain layer, not in the data layer. But as I said, we are simplifying things here, or rather not simplifying. We are making it easy to understand. But while implementation having domain layer is actually a better practice. So here we have repository in the data layer only. And then we have remote data store and local data store. Remote data store will talk to your API, right? If you have a retrofit API service or app service, whatever you call it, or if you don't use retrofit, if you use Volley or any other networking library, OKCTP, then this remote data source will be responsible to talk to your whatever network service you have, or whatever network library you have, to talk to your API that you have. Now, let's come back to local data store. Local data store should be responsible for talking to the local database that you have. Now, a lot of people skip this remote data store and local data store. I would suggest you going against that. Like, you should have remote and local data store, and it's really, really important. It's more important beyond you understand. Why? I will explain that. So that's all in data layer. Let us go to the presentation layer. So that's the presentation and UI layer. And what are the elements here? We cannot say precisely. Data layer is kind of fixed. If you follow repository architecture, repository, local data store, remote data store, and then DB and API, whatever you have, then you are done. You don't need to change anything anymore. But in the presentation UI layer, it totally depends on what architecture pattern you follow. Now, all these patterns are a combination of few rules that enables you to organize your project. Now, I would say it here that there aren't any silver bullets. So, if you think that I will follow MVI and for every project, and that's the best, I would say that might not be best in another scenario. For example, when you are building a MVP app, not a model view presenter, but think of it in a business kind of view, that minimum viable product. When you are building a minimal viable product, and you are shipping it to say your client, right? uh, or your VP, so that you can get some investments, uh, or for any purpose you are building a minimal viable product, then you don't need to, like, you need to have an architecture, right? But you don't need want to spend much time on doing the architecture correct. You want to build it as fast as you can. So in that case, MVP or MVVM might be a better choice, depending on your exact requirement. It might be MVI again, depending on your requirement. So it totally depends which architecture is best fit for you. uh, I am a kind of supporter for Redux based architecture or one way architecture. MVI, MVRX, or Mobius all fits into them. So yeah, so now let us see what's inside MVI. When we can say that this architecture is an MVP or MVVM or MVRX. So we won't be able to discuss all the patterns here today, but I will be discussing MVP, MVVM, and MVI. While discussing, I will also talk about few common mistakes that everyone makes while, or rather not mistakes, they are anti-patterns uh, that not everyone, few people makes while creating projects in these architectures, and why you should avoid them. So, I have created a demo application that will search through. I have used OMDB. So if you are not aware of OMDB, then here's the JSON response I'm getting. So, and this is the request I'm making. So OMDB API is an open API, uh, but it's a free API. You can just register to them, get the API key, and request it. So I have used that API to search for any movie that contains Marvel. So my query was Marvel, and this was the result. As you can see, the main object is the search. Paint object is the search, and in search array, inside search array, there are objects like it actually contains the movie data, right? It has title, year of that movie, IMDb ID for that movie, type of that movie, type. So it can also return you series, right? So I have set a filter to return only the movies. As you can see it here, I have specified type as movie. So here again it provides me the type and poster. So I will try to show you a screenshot. Of the app that I have developed. Let me try. But till then, let us talk here. So that's the GitHub repository. On the end of my presentation, I have provided all the links. So This is here I have tried using the MVP pattern. So in the app, I have also followed a single module architecture. So it has only one module, that is app. I didn't go with multi-module either with clean or feature-based module. I didn't do anything so that it's easier to explain. So app src and then main. Also, I will not talk about tests today, and these repositories were created a couple of days ago. Like this, not these repositories were created probably today or yesterday. This all this code were created a couple of days ago. So I didn't write test cases for it yet, but I will write it. So here I have the base. uh, in the base I have base activity and base contract. I will come back to it, but let me show you something else first. So movie search is the feature, right? I support feature based packaging or feature based moduling. So here I have a single module and the package is feature based movie search. So inside movie search package, as you can see, there is data package and injection package, which is for dependency injection, and I have used Dagger here. Then presentation package, then UI package. As we have talked, data injection, presentation, and UI, four main layers in an Android app. So inside data, there is again injection. Let's ignore it. It's for dependency injection. Local means it contains the database and local data store and everything related to local DB. Then remote, it contains the retrofit configuration, the API class and remote data store. And then here inside the data only, I have the repository interface and repository implementation. So a lot of people does I prefer naming your repository as this. Naming interfaces as this, putting an I in front of interface, and for the implementation, keep it simple. Lot of people prefer the other way around. So instead of doing iMovie repository that I did here, they do movie repository for the interface, and for the implementation that I did movie repository, they do movie repository IMPL. It's personal choice, but I prefer it this way. And it's none of them are good or none of them are bad. iMovie repository isn't bad in my opinion, and movie repository IMPL is also not bad in my opinion. Just I prefer it that way. So yeah, that's the repository. So repository will give you get movies list as a flowable, right? uh, So I will not talk about Flowable here, but I will just explain or RX. I will not explain RX here, but in Flowable you can get multiple streams in comparison to single. Flowable and observable are pretty same except for a single factor, that is back pressure. So I will, if you want to learn about RX Java or back pressure, you can buy my book. A little bit of self advertisement here, but yeah, that's uh, flowable or observable can contain multiple is a stream of data that can emit multiple items. Completable doesn't emit any item, it just can complete or can get error. Single emits a single item and completes. That's single. So yeah, uh, so here it will first emit from local store or local database that we have. If we have any data in local database, it will emit from there, and then after that it will emit from the remote. It will fetch from remote, it will sync it, and then it will emit again. If we don't have anything in local database, it will directly emit from remote and it's done. So yeah, then here's the data store interface. So it expects you to give a stream that will emit multiple like movies. It expects you to also expose a single of list of movies, add movies, and get search suggestions. So here I don't yet have search suggestion implementation. Let me check if I have the screenshot yet. Let me just take the screenshot here from my emulator, and then open it here in Chrome. Let me try. Yeah, I hope you all can see this screen. So it's a screenshot from the app that am talking about right now. So yeah, I am yet to implement the search feature completely. So in the main activity, what I am doing is that I am just searching for Jack, or as I have shown here in this here, I am calling the API with a static value that's either Marvel or Jack or John or whatever. So it's a static search right now. Whenever you open the app, you will get the single set of results. You cannot search yet. Uh, yeah. So here, but I have such functionality like capability in my data layer. So here it will give you search suggestions. So what it's supposed to do is that whenever you search with one item, say Jack, John, or Marvel, uh, it would be saved in your DB. And whenever you go to search again, you can select from autocomplete that, yeah, I have searched with these items before and I can search it. You can tap on it and it will be searched with that. And if you start typing, say you typed MA and you have searched with Marvel before. So Marvel, you can select the Marvel from there. Now, let us go to local. So also, uh, this is the data class or POJO that's common, that's used across the app. So that is the POJO class I am passing towards view model and then activity. So everyone is using that, but as you can see, there's no annotations. So obviously, retrofit or our network layer doesn't use that. I am using map functionality there. So I am mapping, I am getting this class instance from API response, and I am getting this class instance from entity, room entity. So let us start with local again. So in local as well, uh, you can see here that we have the movie entity, right? So it's almost same data class, just that it has the annotations. So IMDb ID is the primary key because it's IMDb ID is unique. Every movie or series has a unique IMDb ID. So that's why IMDb ID is the primary key. And then poster, title, type, and year. All of them are strings, so I don't need to worry about anything. So in the DAO, this is the DAO. I'm not gonna explain DAO here. You can see any session by Florina to learn more about Room. I am just going to explain the local data store. So here we have the local data store, right? Here we are using QueryDAO and MovieDAO both. Now, if you look into the Get Movies, so what is this RxJava Bridge? Is that in this app, as I have mentioned before, that I am using RxJava 3 in this app, which is the latest RxJava version. Now, Room doesn't yet has support for RxJava 3, or it might be in works, but I am not aware of. So Room will expose you RxJava 2 single, right? And RxJava Bridge allows you to convert any RxJava 2 stream into RxJava 3. So that's what I am doing here. So just ignore the RxJava Bridge part and you can focus here. So here I am querying the QueryDAO.add query. So what I am first doing is that whenever you hit the search button, right, with a query, so I am first saving that query in my QueryDAO and then making the search in the entity. So that it will be saved that you had searched for this. You can also do the other way around. So once you have the result, you can add the query. So it's also possible. It's your choice how you want to implement it. So, and that's why this local data store is really, really important. So you are saving a query and then returning the data, right? It's all part of your local DB operations, right? Or it's part of your local operations. Repository is aware of data fetching. Repository should decide whether to fetch it from local database or to fetch it from your remote API. It should not decide like which database to access. It's not a job of repository. Repository should decide which data store to access. Now I am fetching my list of movies, right? And while doing that, I am also saving the query to the another table, right? That is not repository's job to know or do. So if you remove the local data store from here, then all this code will go into repository, which will make it clumsy. Right now, see the repository code. It's really clean. Here I am making the query from local data store. I am checking if it's empty, then I am I'm making sure it's not empty. And then once I am also merging it, here it's from local data store and here it's from remote. I am fetching from remote and saving in local. But I am not worrying about that. While fetching from local data store, I also have to save it to the save the query in the query table. I don't have to worry about that. I just know in repository I am fetching this from my local data store and passing it here to the presenter, and I am done. And once I am fetching from remote, then when I am syncing with remote, then I am fetching from remote and saving it to the local. That's all. That's all I need. Repository needs to know. So yeah, that was about local, and let us have to. So we have covered a local data store. So it uses the DAO only to get the data, and also here the map, what it does is that converts movie entity object. Here we have movie entity object to movie object, and here it converts movie object to movie entity object. So when you call add movies, you will be passing movie object, not movie entity object. So here it's another layer of abstraction guarding the entity object here. So we can make it package private. I didn't do it here, but we can make it package private here, and we can forget about that. Or if you do modules, if you follow clean completely, and if you do modules, then local will be in different module. So this entity won't be visible to anyone outside. So that again is a, so if you change anything here, you don't need to worry about breaking anything anywhere. So if you might want to add another field here, or that's not actually required for the UI, you can do it without breaking anything or without making changes in anywhere. So yeah, and then in remote as well. So that's the response object. Again, say I am now using a third-party API, right? But what if it's an app for Byju's and I'm developing, and tomorrow API team decides to add another parameter here. So I add it here, but I still don't need that in UI level, right? For example, this response object, or I'm not using it in the UI level, the total results. So it returns me the count of results it's sending. You can see it here. So total results is 96. It sent that many objects, like few 5 to 10. It also has pagination support. I am not using that right now. So total results are 96, right? So you can also show that to the user UI, but I am not doing that right now. So I am not using it. There's no need to pass it, right? So again, that's another level of abstraction that you can have if you have local data store and remote data store. Now, let us go to the remote data store. So as we have expected, right, we cannot add movies to remote. So in this case, it will return a completable.error, like a completable that will not complete successfully, that will return error. Similar to get search suggestions, though the search suggestion is based on my local database here. OMDB doesn't yet support search suggestions, right? Or even if it does, it's out of scope for this app here. So I am returning single.error from here. And so again, the stream is expected to return continuous, emit items continuous as they get updated. So that's not the case for here. Remote cannot, we don't yet have that thing that it will be emitting continuously whenever the data is updated in OMDB. I will get the updated data. It's not possible with remote server, right? So I am returning observable.error. Alternatively, what you can also do, you can pass this one only, this single result, where I am calling movie API, which is retrofit API interface. Here, movie API is retrofit movie API interface. So I am using search movies function from remote data store. So you can do the same in the stream and just pass it as a single emit observable. So yeah, that's all about the remote data store. So we have covered local data store, remote data store, and repository as well. In repository, we are first fetching from local data store, checking it, making sure it's not null. If it's null or empty, it goes to the error case. And then we are parallelly also fetching from remote. And while we are fetching from remote, we are also saving it to the local. Whatever we are fetching from remote, we are saving it to the local, right? So repository is done. And yeah, add movies in repositories is just, we are saving it in local, and saturation also providing from local, right? Now let us get to the presentation layer. So in the presentation layer, we have the contract. So in the contract, I have interface of the presenter, I have interface of the view, and both of them extends base presenter and base view. So what base presenter and base view you can see in the base here, the base package. Sorry, it's the base contract. So this is the base view. So I have added few functions here. So this is the base view and this is base presenter. So Kotlin or Java 8 lets you have default implementation for the method. So all the presenters should have attached view and detached view, right? So that's why I created base presenter. And what will attach view do? There will be a variable of view. So T extends base view, and this is a type of view which will extend base view for your presenter, and you will the attached view will just simply take the instance of this view and uh, assign the value here, and detached view will simply set the value to null. And also in the presenter we are will be calling repositories, right? And repositories are returning Rx. So we'll be subscribing to those Rx in the presenter, right? So there will be disposables. So I am clearing out the disposables in the detached view. So detached view should expected to be get called in the on desktop of the activity. That's also I have done in the base activity here. None of these is necessary. Having base contract and base activity is necessary. It's just a personal choice. So here in the on destroy, I am calling presenter detached view, so that in the implementation I don't have to do it again and again, and so that there's no chances of forgetting that. So yeah, let me get back to uh, this presenter, like movie search contract. So here that's the interface. And so what a lot of people does is that instead of having this contract, they straight away write the implementation of presenter and have an interface called presenter callbacks, and implements that presenter callback in the view. Now that does your job to some extent. That might sound okayish, but that's actually not MVP. That's more close to MVC if you follow that, if you study a bit. So here, a presenter should know what are the capabilities of a view. That's why the view, it's view. It's not just a callback, right? That's why it's view interface. And having presenter as an interface makes it easier, so that say might happen that two screens might have you have two fragments and they might have a similar presenter, right? So you can use a single interface and create the implementations for each of them, right? It's easier that way, and it also makes it easier to for writing test cases. So always try, like, you don't need to name it as a contract here, like that. That's again a personal choice. You can name it as a contract, but you don't need. But having interfaces as this is if you want to skip the interface of presenter, that's still fine to some extent, but please don't name the view interface as callbacks. That's not a good practice. That's not really bad, but I would say that's again anti-pattern. So here I have implemented the presenter interface here. It uses the repository, and scheduler provider here provides us the scheduler. You can skip that and use schedulers.io instead of scheduler provider.io and Android schedulers.main thread instead of scheduler provider.ui. Why I use scheduler provider is because, so let me show you the scheduler provider here. So that's the interface and implementation of scheduler provider. So it actually, when you write test cases and when you need to mock the threading, mock the schedulers, scheduler provider helps a lot. So that's why I have scheduler provider here. So that's the presenter. That's all. And let us see the activity as well, UI. So here's only activity and adapter is there. Here's the activity. So presenter and adapter are injected here, and then presenter.attach is all called automatically in the base activity. And here I have a method called presenter attached view is attached here. Presenter detached view is called in the base activity in onDestroy. Why I can't call this in base activity is because it requires the view instance, right? And activity is implementing view. So I can have this in base view, but that will again complicate things. In base view, you have to provide the presenter instance and all. So that will complicate things. So it's better to have it here. And if you forget attaching the presenter, you will like know it instantly. When you run it for the first time in your debug, you will see you haven't attached presenter, so you are not seeing the results. But if you forget detaching the presenter, you might not notice it instantly. You might notice it after say 1 month when there is memory leak because you didn't detach the presenter. So yeah, and I am using view binding here. So that is the bind view binding object here, and that's why I am writing binding.rv movies. You can use view bind Kotlin synthetic if you have a single module project like this one, but viewbinder is a lot better than Kotlin synthetics when it comes to multi-module. Why, that I will explain. If you want, you can reach out to me and I will explain why view binding is better in multi-module projects than Kotlin synthetics. So yeah, that's all about MVP, right? So sorry. So in MVP, what you have a contract, you have a view interface, you have a presenter interface. So what's the bad thing about MVP is the tight coupling. Also that I have mentioned that I detach view, right? So you need to call detach view when the activity is destroyed from the presenter. Otherwise, it there might be a memory leak if you are not handling presenter like if you are not if you are not using feature scopes in with Dragger, or if you are not handling scopes in a better way, there might be memory leak as well. So, and that tight coupling leads to the memory leak. So that's bad about MVP. So that's why a lot of people now, including myself, supports MVVM over MVP. So here you have a view model instead of presenter. Now, how to go to view model instead of going to a presenter? Uh, MVVM sounds a lot complex when you hear about it at the first. Now, let us see. I have a repository here for MVVM as well. It's the same project. Even it's fork from this one only, MVP one only. Just that there's only one commit difference from MVP and this MVVM implementation, and that's this one. So I forked the MVP project here. So GitHub doesn't let you to fork your own project unless you are forking for an organization to your personal one, or your personal one to an organization that you are part of. But it doesn't let you fork, say, uchk slash movie search OMDB MVP to UVCSK slash movie search OMDB MVBM. So what I did was that I cloned the repository into a different folder. I made the change. I pushed it in a different name here, as a different project here. Sorry, or different repository here. So here, this is the commit. So there was changes in 6 files, and I added 48 lines in this commit, and I deleted 71 lines. Right now, if you see here, then this on destroy override I don't need in base activity anymore. So I removed it. So instead of passing view, presenter and all, I just need the view model here as a generic. That I don't need actually. You can skip that part. I am having the view model variable here in the activity base activity. You can completely skip that part, and that will like be fine, completely fine. So here, sorry, yeah. So that's all the change in the base activity. Base contract is now deleted. No need. Movie search contract is now deleted. Now, uh, I have removed the movie search presenter and introduced the view model here. Basically, I renamed the presenter to the view model. As you can see, it was presenter earlier, now it's view model. Now it doesn't know about the view. It still has the disposable, but it overrides nothing because I don't have uh, iMovie search view model because you don't need it for view model because view model doesn't know about view. So everything else in this view model is still similar to what we had. Just instead of view callbacks, I have here live data. So in case of search result, we have search result live data that will contain movie. For suggestion, I have search suggestion live data, and how to let the view know there was some error. I have error live data. So instead of calling view.show movies, I am calling search result dot post value. Now you can keep calling post value and you can call value is equal to movie list. That's still all right because this subscribe is called in the UI thread here, right? Uh, uh, if you show few lines here, then yeah, it is observe on UI thread, right? So it's still all right, but it's better to call the post value only. I prefer it that way. In case of there's an error, I am calling error, not post value error as a live data. In the suggestions here, it was instead of calling view.show queries suggestions, I am posting the value here, suggestions list. Now, what's the change in the activity, right? You might be wondering what's the change in the activity. There might be a huge change. Nothing at all. So here in the import, there's one change. You have to include the observer, and instead of presenter, it's now view model. And as I have it in the base view model, you still have the override here. Again, that's you can totally skip this part. Remove this view model from base activity and just have it here. It's totally your choice. Then instead of presenter.attach view, presenter.search movies here, we are subscribing to these view models, right? To these live data, right? And then we are calling view model method search movies. It's as simple as that. And I have removed override from each of the methods because it overrides nothing. Earlier it was in the view, movie search view interface. Right now that interface is gone, right? There's no need to have a contract right now. So I have removed the override from here. So that's all about MVVM. So we have moved from MVP to MVVM. Now, having error as a live data. Also, didn't mention loading here. I didn't code for loading. There also needs to be a loading state, right? So for each state, say search movie, and then suggestions, then error loading. For each part of the state, having a live data, it doesn't sound very good, right? So what we can do? We can introduce a state variable. State is state variable is nothing. Just so here, this is I am calling MVVM plus state. You can just straightforward call it MVVM only. There's nothing as plus state. It's just I am using the state variable here. So a lot of people uses state with MVVM and lot of people doesn't use a state. Both are totally all right. There's no hard written rule that you have to use state with the MVVM, but it's always better to have a state. Why? Let me show you. So this is again another repo that I have that's forked from the MVVM one, but that has state. Again, that there's only one commit difference from the previous one or from the MVVM one, simple MVVM one. It's also simple now. So here we have a data class called state. So if you notice here, we have a list of movies here, a list of suggestions here for when you start searching. Error state here, like if there's an error, and loading here. So by default, loading is false. So let's think of the ideal state. When the activity is first created, it is not loading. There isn't any error because none of the requests started yet. Sessions are blank. Results are blank, right? That's what expected in a like when the activity is first starting. So that is the ideal state. Then here's the view changes in view model. So instead of having that many live data, now we have only one live data, right? So this live data takes care of everything else you need. So when there's a success, you set this loading state as false. You set the movie list to movies, and you set the error as empty string. Since here we have error as a string, you can also have an error instance or exception instance. So here I am using it like I am casting the search results live data to mutable live data so that we can post the value. It was similar in MVVM, earlier MVVM, and it is similar here. So here, what I am doing here is that I am accessing the last value and of the mutable live data, and then I am using copy constructor to change a single object here or change these three objects here. If you notice here in the suggestions, I am changing only a single object. Remaining, I am letting it as it was before. So here I have a default value that is the ideal state of the search state data class. So here I have default values for all of them. So if you just call the search state default constructor without any parameters, it will return you the ideal state. So by default, this live data will contain the ideal state. It is the default value. So this search state dot value will never be null. So I have confidently put this here, and so if there's null, it will throw null pointer exception, but it will never be null. I am sure of it. So there will never be null pointer exception. And then I have used copy constructor and assigned values accordingly, right? So as I said, MVVM with state is even easier. And if you are wondering about the changes in the activity, then here it is. instead of subscribing to all of the search results, then search suggestions, error, and I miss the loading part here in the simple MVVM. So in the MVVM without state implementation, so there would be a lot of observing, right? Here you need to observe on only one thing, that is search state. And instead of having show movies, show query session, show error and everything, I have a single function here, render. What it will do, it will check if the state is loading. You don't need to do anything. If the error, if the state is error, that is error is not empty, you just show the error and you don't need to do anything more. If neither of them is the state, so if we have a list of movies, I am showing list of movies. That's all. So yeah, that's all about MVVM with state or MVVM. So both, as I said, MVVM without state and MVVM is pretty much valid. So another popular architecture is MVI. That I will not cover MVI a lot today, but I will just say a couple of words. So in MVI, we have intent, action, result, and state. So in MVVM, we have just state, and in MVI, we have intent, action, result, and state. I have a example of MVI here, UCHK Android MVI clean arc example. So it actually is a pretty much professional example. There I have Gradle dependencies in open. If you go to build.gradle here, I have it here. That is not at all suggested, but I didn't wanted to divert the focus, so that's why I had it like that. But it's pretty much more professional implementation. Here we have build SSC to take care of dependencies and all. You can go through that and you can reach out to me if you have any queries. Also, another anti-button that I want to discuss about MVVM and state is that I have noticed that a lot of people sets the state from the repository, right? Now that's not, I would say that's again an anti-pattern. Why? Because if you go to the state right now, right? Let's go to the state declaration. So state has loading, error, and all those things. Now repository doesn't need to know what is the view state, right? Repository only cares about fetching the data and passing it to the view model or presenter, whatever you have, right? So don't set the state from repository. Rather set the state from view model or presenter, whatever you have, and pass the raw data from repository to view model as we are doing it here. And in the view model or presenter, you can map or you can convert that raw data value to your state. State maintenance is not repository's job. It's the job of view model. Repository cares about fetching the data. State maintenance and is a part of business logic. If that condition, so if there is movie list, there should not be any error. That's my business logic, right? So repository should not know about this. It's again S of the solid principle. So yeah, that's all about architectures that we are going to discuss today. I am done on my side. You can go to these links to get the repositories. You can clone it. You can reach out to me anywhere you want. So this is my website. You can reach out to me here, and it contains all my contact details, all my social media details. It contains my Twitter, GitHub, and all the links. My website, and I also have few blogs there. So yeah, And now I think we can take the questions. If you have any questions so far, we can take them right now. So I already mentioned which architecture I personally like, and so I personally like MVI, and I have like looked into Mobius and MVRX as well. I like them as well. So that's my personal choice. And in Byju's, we have so on the outside you might see that Byju's has only one project. That's the Pesto app, but we have a lot of projects and different projects. So we have MVVM on few projects, and on few projects that's that has MVP yet, but with a bit of Redux touch. That's like I can't explain today here. That's going to take time. Yeah. I think I answered your question. Yeah. Next question. I didn't find that much resources on Jetpack component with Java. Is there any helpful resource for starting with MVVM? So for starting with MVVM, you can follow my project here that I shared, and it's pretty much simple. So you can implement the same thing in Java. But my question is that if you are in Android, why bother about Java? Kotlin is now first, not only first plus supported. Google has announced that Kotlin is the first choice right now. If you have heard of Jetpack Compose, which is the new way of doing UI, that's still not yet on production, still on pre-alpha, but still it's going to be in production in a couple of years or so. We'll be writing Kotlin code for the UI as well. So why bother about Java? Why not learn Kotlin now? Yeah, I think I answered your question. But yes, if you want, you can get in touch with me and we can work on translating this project that I have for MVVM to Java. Any more questions if we have? uh, Shared preference, if you can have shared preference in local data store, that's very much appreciated. And I would suggest that only, but a lot of people keep shared preference, still keep shared preference outside local data store. But I would highly prefer if you have shared preference inside the local data store only. And I if you have if you look into my own project, personal projects, I do it that way only. Yeah, I hope I answered your questions. If we have background service, and in background service all API call, how to maintain local. So local data store is nothing but a Java class, right? You can so in the background service you can say you have 10 features, right? So for 10 features you will have 10 local data stores. You can still have 9 or 8 if two or three features are very much similar. So in the background service that we have, you can take instance of those local data stores, and you can have remote data stores as well. You can call it there. So or you can even use repository as well. So that background data service that we have will now work more like the view model or the presenter. It will talk to repository or local or remote data store better if it talks to repository and does your job. You can still have yeah, so to answer your question, you can have uh, local and remote layer with the background service. Background service is not an excuse to move out from local and remote layer. Yeah. And also another answer to your Bhargav. You in your repository, as you have noticed, we had a function called sync. So you can also call that sync, that kind of function, to know how can I start Android development with Kotlin. That is not my focus in today's talk, but you can start with CodeLab. Just search with Android Kotlin CodeLab and you will find it. Yeah. So I next question is, what's your thought on paging library? Uh, Paging library is good, uh, and yeah, paging library is good. It's but in Room, you will need paging library when you are dealing a lot with a lot of data, right? So in an app like Byju's, you will need paging, and in that case, paging library is really helpful. But you can still, if you are familiar with SQLite and you are confident about SQLite, you can emulate the paging library functionalities with your own. If you do that, you will remove a lot of complexities. I am fully in support of pagination, but I prefer doing it manually. Uh, Paging library is when you are attaching your adapter to your room, and to do that, you have to move out from local data store structure, and you have to directly access your DB from your activity. Now, if you do that, for example, a lot of companies today does a project review, right? If you do that in any of their projects, I am pretty sure that most of the companies will reject you, uh, because it's better at least have a repository to talk to the database. A lot of people don't have the repository as well, but again, as I suggested today, that's anti-pattern. Okay, so that's it for now. I hope to see you again. Yeah, Anubhav.
Thanks a lot, Rivuda. It was a wonderful session. I'm very sure that everyone enjoyed it a lot. So we'll be having more sessions from
Thanks so
Rivuda in
much.
the future. He'll be extending his talks from today to other topics which are closely related. So thanks a lot, everyone, for joining in. I know it's pretty late. Be safe and keep learning. Use this time. Thank you. Thanks a lot, everyone.
See you, everyone.